Thought I'd take this opportunity to do a quick little video on something that I've been thinking about for a while and actually found a couple of quotes for, but haven't really figured out when would be a good time to fit them in. However, something that someone put up on Facebook earlier today, my Christian forum, made me think this would actually be a good opportunity because they seem to link together. Basically, someone was saying on Christian forum, or Christian humor forum, that she was worried whether she'd go to heaven or hell. She was worried if she would have a name in the Book of the Lamb. And was even having panic attacks over it. Many people were saying many things to calm her down and explain that she was saved by Christ, which I'm in no position to argue against. I don't know her history. I don't know what she's done. It's not my job to answer. And once I gave my answer, I feel this video might help a bit, particularly in the second quote. But let me start by covering why I originally wanted to do this video. And that was due to a discussion I had with someone about magic. Because magic, in its own sense, doesn't really have to be evil. It's a bit like, well, down here I've got my dog. He's, well, sweet and adorable, but she can be a bit of a menace sometimes. That's all down to how we treat her. Isn't that right, girl? Isn't it? If I wanted her to become an attack dog, I could train her to do so. Might be a bit reluctant, she's a retriever, but she will attack. If I wanted to be a calm, quiet, well-behaved dog, let's choose now. Keep treating her like so, keep giving her the appropriate discipline, and that'll be her sorted. Magic is very much the same. Essentially power that one uses in an aggressive manner. Or can use in an aggressive manner. Another thing of it is like a weapon, a sword. You need to defend yourself just as much as you can to fight off someone. And by that I mean literally harm them. I've got a number of swords that I keep for collection. But if I wanted to, I can use them to attack people. All my weapons are for reenactment, for display, for collection purposes, not for attack. They are perfectly capable of being sharpened up and being used. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're entirely safe. It just depends on how you use the intent behind them. C.S. Lewis wrote about something similar in The Chronicles of Narnia, in The Magician's Nephew in particular. This is when, if you haven't read that book, I suggest skipping forward. This is a bit of a spoiler. But basically, someone has to go to a garden and pick an apple from a tree and bring it back to the Great Lion, Aslan, so they may sow it to protect Narnia. Particularly from the White Witch, who had entered the world at its very beginning. So I'm going to read the quote from that book, and hopefully it will give a better context of what I'm talking about than I can name off the top of my head. There must be some mistake. She can't really mind the smell of those apples. Why do you think that? Well, She ate one. Child, that is why the rest of them are now a horror to her. That is what happens to those who pluck and eat the fruit at the wrong time and the wrong way. Fruit is good, but they loathe it ever after. Oh, I see. And I suppose because she took it in the wrong way, it won't work for her. I mean, it won't make her always young and all that. Alas, it will. Things always work according to their nature. She has won her heart's desire. She has unwavering strength, and endless days like a goddess. With a length of days, with an evil heart, is only length of misery, and already she begins to know it. All get what they want, but don't always like it. I nearly ate one myself, Aslan. Would I? You would, child. For the fruit always works. It must work. But it doesn't always work happily for any who pluck at the wrong time, at their own will. If a Narnian, unbidden, had stolen an apple and planted it here to protect Narnia, it would have protected Narnia. But it would have done so by making it into another strong, cruel empire, like Charn. Not the kindly land I mean it to be. And the witch tempted you with another thing, my son, did she not? Yes, Aslan. She wanted me to take it. She wanted me to take an apple home to mother. Understand, then, that it would have healed her, but not for your joy or hers. The day would have come when both you and she would have looked back and said it would have been better to die in that illness. That is what would have happened, my child, to a stolen apple. It's not what will happen now. What I give you now will bring joy. It will not in your world give endless life, but it will heal. Go, pluck an apple from the tree. That just shows that if we do things in our own way, we will constantly founder. I always mention a story that I've got to tell that is basically me potentially being a richer man in some ways, but I would be much poorer in another way. But due to the nature of that story, I can't tell it right now. Instead, we have to wait for a better time. And when I actually have permission. Essentially, you do God's will in His way, we are more likely to succeed. But otherwise, it would have been better to simply leave things well enough alone. But what does that have to do with will and magic? Well, if we use magic in a negative way, we use it at the wrong time in the wrong way, then, well, we're simply dooming ourselves because we use it in a different manner. Like with the apple, if it was taken and consumed at the wrong place at the wrong time, against the will of the one who created them, then it would do what it has to do. It has to abide by its own rules. But it wouldn't be the same. Because it's a bit like receiving a large sum of money and either hoarding it or using it for good. We hoard it, we would have the money, we'd be richer, but we'd be poorer in spirit. Notice that the sun's coming out right in my face. I'll try and wrap this video up in a minute. But where will that power come from? Where will that will come from? Is it something we can gain ourselves, or is it something we can be given? And what is the difference? Well, I can answer both those questions about magic and our chance to go to heaven with another quote. This one from The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. Fortunately, this one doesn't require any particular setup, so I can just go straight into the quote. There are two types of power: inherent and granted. Inherent power you possess as part of yourself. Granted power is lent or given by other people. Inherent power is an obvious thing: strength of body, strength of mind, strength of personality. All these things lie within a person. They define us. They determine our limits. Not entirely. A man can always improve himself. They limit us. A man with one hand will never wrestle in the roundings. A man with one leg will never run as quick as a man with two. An Eardam warrior with only one hand might be more deadly than a common man with two, despite his deficiency. True, we can improve ourselves, exercise our bodies, educate our minds, groom ourselves carefully, for even appearance is a type of power. But there are limits. Whilst a one-handed man might become a passable warrior, he could not play a lute. You make a point, Your Grace. Our power has limits we can extend, but not indefinitely. But that is only the first type of power. We are only limited if we rely on the power we ourselves possess. There is still the type of power that is given. Do you understand what I mean by granted power? Taxes? Was actually rather a good example. Which do you think is the greatest type of power? The inherent. Power you possess yourself cannot be taken away. We've already agreed that that type of power is severely limited. Granted power has no limits. Well, very few limits. Let's say I have an enemy, young and strong. Let's say he stole something from me. Some money. No manner of training will make me the match of a quarrelsome 20-year-old. So what do? I get one of my young, strong friends to go and box his ears. With that strength, I can accomplish a feat which would be impossible. Your enemy could box your friend's ears instead. Or let's say I got 3 friends together. Suddenly I've been granted the strength of 3 men. My enemy, even if he were very strong, could never be as strong as that. You're missing the point anyway. The lending of strength is just an example. Some types of power can only be given. Do you see Comte Fairlord over there? If you ask him about his title, he would say he possesses it. He would claim it as part of him, as much as his own blood. A part of his blood, in fact. Almost any noble will say the same thing. They would argue their lineage imbued them with the right to rule. But they are wrong. It is not inherent to power. It is granted. I could take his lands and leave him pauper on the street. Here's a great secret. Even my title, my riches, my control over people and the land. It's only granted power. It belongs to me no more than does the strength of your arm. But I know the difference. That's why I'm always in control. Still seem hard to convince. One last example then. Can we agree that I will never be able to give birth to a child? I think that's safe to say, sir. Yet if a woman grants me the right to wed her, I can give birth to a son. Through granted power, a man can make himself as fast as a horse, as strong as an ox. Can inherent power do this for you? Here's the thing we have to remember. We have our own power to make our decisions. When we go to heaven, beyond our physical form, we have no control. Barely in our physical form. That's because our power to go to heaven isn't an inherent part of us. It's granted by God. Something given to us by Jesus on the cross. It's no more a part of us than our ability to speak. God can take everything away from us, but he hasn't. He has the inherent power that is nearly limitless. But us humans, we struggle with it. We have great limits, but God makes our limits limitless. As for magic, if we use power that we can find ourselves, then we lose all things. If, however, we use power granted by God, we are limitless. I intend to work that into my story at some point. But hopefully, those of you that are doubting yourselves, whether you can go to heaven or not, which is something I don't really focus on. Focus more on this one. Hopefully you understand that the gift of God isn't inherent, it is granted. He chooses to give it to us, and that is an incredible gift. Let us not waste it, so share it with people. Stay safe, people, and God be with you. Let me just finish this video, okay? Then I'll be with you. Hey, you need that, don't you? There's a similar thing right there.